Welcome to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. I'm your host, Peggy Coffbean, and this week we are looking back on some of our top episodes of 2024. And today's guest is from one of those top episodes, Mr. Tim Abbott, who is my guest on episode number 143. Sitting on the Showbox was the title of that one. And so today we're catching up with Tim about what has challenged him in the past year, what has changed him, some of his greatest wins, and I've put the challenge on Tim to pick out a word to live by in 2025. Enjoy this conversation with Tim Abbott right here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. Tim, I wanted to invite you back as one of our top guests for the year to recap 2024 and do a little envisioning for 2025. At the most basic level, what I want to hear from you is looking back on the past year, 2024, what challenged you? What changed you? What were some of your greatest wins? I've put a task on you, Tim, to choose a word to live by in 2025. Are you up for the challenge of answering these questions?
Yeah, I can't wait. I've thought a lot about the questions, Peggy, and there's so many words that I could say. I just got to keep it focused. So I'm really, really excited about it because 2024 was, interestingly, a brand new year for me. But it was kind of the rebirth of Tim because of Showbox Sires. 2024 was a year of, to use the term rebirth, a little bit of that. And with that, in the 7 or 8 years I'd been out of the AI business, the whole thing has changed. And so with rebirth, I had to retrain and I had to re-educate and I had to relearn. And I probably have had to become a better listener in 2024 because at the end of my career, most of the narratives I was making, I gave the direction. I was the band leader. By the time I came back in 2024, everything had changed. And the way we market, the way people listen to you and receive you, it's all changed. So yeah, there's several words in there, several pieces that I'll let you focus on.
You just gave me a whole pile of stuff to dig into. So thank you for that. And before we dig into the details, recap for someone that may not be familiar, what your career path looked like and why there was such a significance of a rebirth in 2024 for you.
Sure. The quick story of Tim Abbott was I started with a breed association, loved it, made so many great contacts and friends all over the world. Working for the Jersey Association, great part of my history that you and I had a great time talking about. Many of my early mentors came from the Jersey days. Then I went into the AI world where I bought bulls for ABS for 20 years. I learned so many skills there. I learned to negotiate. I learned to develop relationships. I learned to certainly evaluate and prioritize things, both from a genetic standpoint and a personal standpoint. So I was in the AI business and sire acquisition. And then I went to company management, sales management, business management, and ran several divisions of ABS that I led the team for sales and promotion. Subsequently, my wife, Sharon, and I ended up acquiring St. Jacobs ABC, small AI company that we built a brand with and built that company kind of from the ground up. And then about 7 years ago, sold the company to ABS and went into a phase of not being in the AI business. So then fast forward to about 2023, we started Showbox Sires with Mike and Julie Duckett and started developing a similar approach to the AI industry that we'd used at St. Jacobs. And so 2024 was really the birth year of Showbox Sires.
So a brand was born and you were essentially reborn into the sector of the industry that you had been a part of for your whole career. So in that 7-year gap, what changed the most? You noted that there were some things that had shifted a lot in your sector of the business, this genetics and marketing. What are some of the big things that changed that really stuck out to you as you re-entered into the AI world?
Yeah, a couple things. Technology, number one, And probably technology is the answer to that question, period. But several different layers of technology. The technology of genetics in our world through genomic evaluations and predictions have become, when I left the AI world, they were important and you knew they were going to be a piece, but they were in their infancy, just starting to develop. By the time we came back 7 years later, it's a monster today. And in a good way, the customer has learned what traits to look at. They've learned what traits to put to their herds and how to use genetic predictions to help them become more profitable. Before, Peggy, on the type side of things, which is our focus, there wasn't much effort on that. The numbers were a little bit less reliable. We had a little less history with it. But today, the customer is educated on what traits they can look for and where they get their most gains for their operation to take them to the next level. I think the customer has become more educated. The tools are sharper. So just from a whole genetic piece, that has changed in 7 years in a very, very good way.
So there's that availability of more information and more knowledge on the customer side, as well as the availability of that data and through genomics and looking at specific traits that people are able to really have a grasp on. That was different than 7 years ago when you stepped back. But what brought you back? You could have ridden off into the sunset here, Tim. Like, I'm not calling you old, but why did you want to get back into a space that had changed a lot? What was it that brought you back?
Well, I think two things, and I know it's a cliche, but I say in my career, I've really never worked a day in my life because I've always loved it. I love the breeders, the people, and I love the cows. So in my 7-year hiatus, I didn't just sit in a rocking chair. We started the Alliance sales company and run some big sales. We started Border View Genetics and breed and develop high-end cattle and embryos. Been involved in several different committees and projects. I was still intertwined into the business, but I guess to specifically answer your question, I came back to it because I missed it. I missed leading an effort. I missed a focus of a cause. And I truly felt the industry was missing the mark. The breeders that want these kind of genetics didn't have a whole lot of sources to get them. And so, cut to the chase, I think there's dollars flying around out there. I'm still not opposed to gathering a few of them up and putting in my pocket if I can. And ultimately, there's no other way to say it than that. But those are the things that drive you.
So that all goes back to a word you mentioned quite a bit, and that was this rebirth of your stage in life of starting something new and starting something again from scratch, but within the same vein that has always driven you. And that is working with cattle, serving people, and doing it really, really well. So there have been changes that you have observed. There have been challenges that you were excited to step up to in 2024. Do you feel like you're the same Tim that set foot out the door on January 1st, 2024? Or do you think that these experiences have shifted you a little bit in one way or the other?
Yeah, I sure hope I'm better because I'm a year older and time is not on my side. So I hope I'm better. Better is a term that who the heck knows what that means. If I look at what I am 345 days later, I'd say today I'm more energetic for the business than ever because I've learned that the passion is there. I'm watching our company explode and grow. It took more months than I had anticipated, but recently, since World Dairy Expo, we've watched an explosion of our business around the world, and that's humbling and exciting. I think I've learned that I have got to retrain myself from a marketing standpoint. You've helped me with that with your Uplevel podcast, Peggy. We have to bring information to the customer in a different way. I used to every month make my print ads, directories and brochures, and we'd send them out. We'd sit in our living room, fold flyers and stick them in envelopes and send them US mail. That doesn't happen anymore. It's not the way we communicate. And websites and Facebook and TikTok and podcasts are things that I'm not very familiar with. I have slowly started to drink from that, but it's a bit of a fire hose. I feel like every time I think I understand what some mode of communication is, some young person comes up and says, are you on WhatsApp or are you on TikTok? And I don't even know what they're talking about. So it's a real challenge.
I think you could go viral on TikTok, Tim, for a lot of different things. So at some point when you decide to go down that route, I think it will do well for you. But okay, when you really look at what the last year has been and rising to those challenges and the way that it has kind of forced your own growth and to look at the world differently, to think about how you're reaching your audience differently. When you started 2024, are you a guy that sets goals? So you launched officially this past year. Again, not your first business, not your first rodeo, but like, how do you do these things? You write out goals, you got a business plan, you'll kind of like fly by the seat of your pants. How do you do it?
It's a hybrid of all the above, but I would say I'm a real goal setter. I have to have goals. I know how many bowls I wanted to have in our system at the end of 2024. I knew how many units sales I wanted to be rolling at by the end of this year. I know how many units I'd like to sell in 2025. And then all the pieces to get us there is the evolution part. I don't really have a plan because that evolves as I learn things and find new ways. We're lucky because our partners, Mike and Julie Duckett, are a young couple seeing a lot of different things and starting to travel the world for Mike's judging and for Showbox Sires. And they come home with great new ideas every time. So I think it's a combination of a notepad writing things down. But the other thing, Peggy, if I'm the only one that knows my goals, I'm not going to get there as quick as if everybody else knows my goals. And I'm a big believer that you got to communicate your goals. Otherwise, nobody can help you get there. I've always been a guy I'm not a great sit around a room and strategize for days in a locked in room and come out with a new statement or a new mantra. But I really like the concept of saying very clear directives on what we're going to try to do.
So with that, you had mentioned that one of your clear goals for this year was having a certain number of bulls into Showbox Sires. And so let's just take that goal for example, and put into practice what you shared with us. So that was a very clear goal. Probably wrote that on a piece of paper somewhere.
Right in this file.
So you have the file. And then for you, who do you share that with? You mentioned that you feel that's a very integral piece of making things happen, is sharing some of those goals with people that can help you get there. So who are your people? Who do you share your goals and ambitions with?
Certainly, first and foremost is Sharon. Poor Sharon has to hear them all, the good, the bad, the ugly. There are times she laughs and says, you're crazy. Times she says, yes, this is good. And times she says, let's do more. So she's a great barometer when I express my goals. And certainly now with a partnership with Mike and Julie Duckett or Chris and Jen Hill with the sales company, they're the people we communicate with, specifically on a group of bulls. Mike and I had to clearly develop a path to come up with 15 bulls to have in our ownership and control and with semen released by the end of 2024. That was our goal. 15 red and white and Holstein bulls into the system. So within Mike and Julie, within Sharon, and then certainly the companies that are distributing our product, because it's critical that they get the bulls in on time and they get semen collected on time, all those things. So everybody that I feel has to help pull the wagon, I've got to hook them to the wagon at some point.
So that's kind of your style of going after these things. And again, using the goal of getting 15 bulls into Showbox Sires as an example. And I want to weave back into what you shared before about how much this particular sector of the industry has changed. What's it like to acquire bulls today, especially compared to how you would have done it when you were at ABS and doing these things a few years back? How's your game changed?
Great question, because that's one of the biggest changes. So as I said it, I'm sure our listeners are saying, my word, 15 bulls, get with it, Abbott. That's easy. Well, the problem is breeders don't make bulls anymore. When I was with ABS, one of my favorite stomping grounds was Franklin County, Pennsylvania. I could go up and down the road from Hagerstown, Maryland to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I could stop at 20 farms that would have bulls I could acquire. I could have a load of bulls and one overnight at the Hampton Inn in Chambersburg and about 15 herd stops. I'd have a whole load of bulls because breeders made them and they kept them and all that. Today in the world of genomics, the AI companies don't buy nearly as many bulls. And really, there was just one company buying show type bulls. And that's probably not the right term. I guess I'd say high type bulls, like Mike and I are trying to acquire. So there just were none in captivity. We plowed through lists and lists and lists, and we'd call, and either they were health dirty or they were running with a group of heifers, which would disqualify them for what we needed, or they had sold them to the neighbor. And so we basically from scratch had to build our own bulls. So we aggressively went out and bought IVF sessions to start creating our own bulls, bought embryos from different places all over the world to acquire our bulls. So our 2025 lineup will be the result of that. IVF sessions and embryos we bought from breeders all over the world to create our product line. 2024 was a hodgepodge of what Mike and I already had and some of our partners had. And when we were able to get to our 15 bulls, but 2025, our product mix is going to be totally different how we acquired them, which is fun.
Yeah, which is super fun. What does that mean is on your goal list for 2025, but truly the horizon for the customers of your product? What does your portfolio look like?
We want to keep our portfolio global. We want the best cows in the world. Mike and I own one of the top type heifers in the world genomically, and she stands in New Zealand. And her eggs will be returned to the United States just after Christmas. We find that exciting. We're acquiring bulls in Canada, in Italy, and in Ireland, and they're all coming here to make bulls for us. So the product offering is not just going to be the greatest cows you see at World Dairy Expo. They'll be the greatest cows you see at the European Championship or International Dairy Week or the Royal Winter Fair with the pedigrees that we want. So that's how the product offering is going to look. The other way Mike and I are excited to do, and one of our visions was we wanted to allow breeders of these kind of cattle a method to sell their bulls. So we are working diligently with breeders that want to make us a bull today. So Peggy, you own a great show cow and you're going to IVF her. We'll give you a suggestion of a bull and you'll try to create a bull, and then we'll do some kind of ownership plan where we can all win together. So in 2026, we hope more bulls are acquired from breeders that will be our partners in this endeavor, so the breeders can win a little more as well.
So this is exciting, Tim. This is going back a little bit old school to the relationship that bull studs and breeders used to have, right? That was a way that a producer could take something that they love to do, make good animals that they like to milk and look at, and have a market for them that was bigger and broader than their own barn. That's what you're bringing back.
I have to put a little bit of a wrapper around that. We're small. We're talking about a dozen bulls a year that we've got to come up with ish. So we're not going to change the world for breeders. But you're right, Peggy. Obviously, the big home run is having a lease bull go to AI that becomes a 1 million unit bull and having him on open end lease. Those are home runs. Those have changed farms, right? Those numbers. We all know the story. But even the guy that sells the bull to AI for $5,000 and the bull does a great job and you increase the value of your herd tenfold, that's still got great value to our breeders. And so we're trying to do a little bit of all that where we can all win.
Yeah, fun and exciting. So when you look at the show sector of the industry, which is a place where a lot of people play, it's breeders, it's producers of all scales, it's people like my husband and I that work in the industry but don't milk cows for a living. There's something about that sphere that brings so many of us to it, that draws an excitement, an energy, an enthusiasm. So what do you see as the trends? What really became clear to you from a trends standpoint as you have been observing this industry for a long time, but really gotten back into the bull side of things in the past year, as far as the future pulse on where type and show cattle and the interest there is going? What have you noticed and what's it telling you about the future?
Well, the first thing we've got to continue to utilize is genomic evaluations to help the end customer make more money, whatever that means to them. And I get frustrated. It's not just GTPI. It's not just PTAT. It's all the things that you need in your program. And everybody's different. I frankly think everybody ought to have their own selection index for their operation. So Peggy Coffeen's farm. You want these 3 traits, focus on them and go get the best bulls for that. I think we got to continue to send that message that one size doesn't fit all, and there's nothing wrong with everybody being a little different. But coming right out of Nashville, Peggy, I saw 2 different really exciting groups of people. One, at one point, I was sitting around a table and I said to them, "You guys milk 100,000 cows, and you're here at Nashville for the All American announcements and the biggest type sale in the business. Why are you here?" And they continue to say they still love cows. I don't care if you milk 50 cows or you milk 50,000 cows. The passion to own good cows is always there. Also, family. Most everybody in this business grew up with 4-H, FFA, breed associations, some great mentor at a school, and they want their kids and their grandkids to get that experience of going to the county fair. Why not drive a Ferrari when you get to the county fair rather than a Volkswagen? So when I was sitting around the table with guys that milk 100,000 cows, that's kind of what I found. Then I also sat with quite a few industry folks, just like you and your husband, that are there because of your passion for people and still great cows, and you derive your income from other places, but you still love investing in this. And a side note, I've got a group of friends from Vermont. There is about 10 of them that all grew up on farms and are all agriculture based. And they formed a little LLC and came to Nashville and bought a bunch of cows because they've got the passion to do that. And none of them have grandkids to show. None of them have their own farm that they're worried about making fancier cows at. They want to be part of this industry, and they want to go to Madison and they want to go to Eastern States and Harrisburg and feel that. So that's a long answer, Peggy, but I think it's better than ever.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. And there's so much enthusiasm. And one of the things I wanted to also ask you about, Tim, were your wins from 2024, how you'd identify some of your top wins. And I'm curious, what else really stands out to you when you look back on the past 12 months?
Several wins. I start with a couple personal wins. I don't talk enough about my family on these things. And I think my family, my 2 daughters and Sharon, need more credit for what drives me. But a win for me, both my daughters, Caitlin, who is a travel nurse, has had a huge year working at NICU units all over the United States and becoming a commodity that people are after. They see her resume and they contact her, and whether it's Bozeman, Montana, or Charlottesville, Virginia, or Burlington, Vermont, she's building her path. And boy, you want to talk about a proud papa. And then Chelsea, our oldest daughter, who had been in cattle breeding world for a while and left and ran off into the wilderness and led people as a guide in Montana, came back to the business and works in advanced reproductive technologies now and is just absolutely loving it. And so huge for Sharon and I, huge satisfaction to see our girls in a great spot with their careers and their lives. So that's a huge win for me as a dad to see 2 daughters that are succeeding in their own worlds, very different worlds. But other wins, certainly the development of Showbox and World Dairy Expo was the crowning jewel for us. The thousands of people that came to our booth and then literally watching sales explode and people from all over the world contacting Mike and I, wanting to know about our bulls, wanting us to come speak at meetings. It was World Dairy Expo was a huge win for us because we connected to the industry better than ever. And then certainly Nashville, the success of an event like Nashville with 250, 300 people there, all driving each other to be better. I would say those were 2 business wins and certainly a great personal win with how the kids are doing.
What a year. Tim, when I look back on some of the things that I would call wins for 2024 in my book, one of the things that was not on my goal list originally, but that happened to transpire, was the connection that you and I have been able to make. I look back on this connection as a win, especially with what we were able to do at World Dairy Expo together, telling the Showbox stories with some of the greats, with Ernie Keepner and Tom Morris and Jim Ostrom and John Vosters from Milk Source and Steve Briggs. That was a huge win in my book, the connection you and I were able to make and the cool things we're able to do together. When you and I had the idea to do that, at the core of it was to do something fun that people would enjoy. and to honor those in the industry. And I think we did it. I think we did it.
It'll be so fun in 10 years to go back and listen to those legends, their words and their advice. And we can write books and all that. This is another way to document all that. And I'm fascinated with the history book we started to write while we're at Madison. And I am really fired up in 2025 to try to write more chapters of the history book of the business with you.
Oh, so am I, Tim. So more to come, more to come. There's some of our friends out there that we're excited about that Showbox Stories series and have people that they would like to hear from. I would love to know who's on their list. For people that do have a voice or an icon in the industry that they'd like to hear the backstories of, totally welcome those suggestions for some more cool things that we can do to serve people and to honor those in the industry. Tim, I gave you one more task for this conversation today, and that is to look ahead into 2025. Every year for almost 10 years now, I choose one word, my word that I live by for the year. And I've tasked you with that same challenge to choose a word for yourself for 2025. And now 2024, from what you shared, the words rebirth were very strong themes, and that seemed to really ring true. So I'm very excited to hear, what's your one word for 2025 that will direct your actions, your reactions, your goals, your ambitions, the way that you take a step every single day in the next year? What's your one word?
First thing, you have to commit to me, Peggy. We're going to meet in 360-ish days and review how I did on this word. Because if we'd have done this interview last year, rebirth probably wouldn't have been my word. But it's funny how that developed. But for me, there is a word that I'm going to put above my desk here because of this conversation, and it's focus. My word is focus because I have plenty of energy. I have plenty of passion. I have plenty of ideas. I don't have enough focus on how I'm going to get to the key things I need. And the thing I don't have enough of, and none of us do, is time. We're all running out of time with everything we're doing. And as I get ready to celebrate my 60th birthday, I can't believe I'm saying that, in a few months, the thing that I don't have enough of is time. And that's why the word is focus, because I've got to be more focused so I get more time with my family, more time with my friends, and more time to do things in business that move the needle. I'm really good at doing a lot of things that make the needle move, but I'd like to do fewer things that make the needle move more quickly. That's my word of 2025 will be focus, and those are some of the reasons that I think I need to make that my word.
So what are you going to do differently? What will you do in your day-to-day and your habits to be more focused?
I'm going to ask, can you block Sharon from listening to this podcast? Because I don't want her to hear me saying these things. She may hold my feet to the fire. To me, certainly the first step to this is saying no. I've got to learn to say no. And I hate saying no. If you call me, Peggy, and say, Tim, can you do a podcast? And I say, no, I have no time, but yeah, let's do it. Or Tim, can you fly to Minnesota and read pedigrees for me in a cell? No. And then I say, but yeah, I'll make it work. And I've got to say no to benefit my own family, friends, business a little bit better. So number one item would be to say no. And then I think number two, closely behind it, is really try to get to where I'm going. And my big focus in 2024 is the development of Showbox. And so every step of the way, we've got the train rolling, I feel now. And now I want to just add that fuel to the fire that eventually I can step back and turn over the reins and let somebody else build the fire. So my vision is to get this thing rolling enough that maybe we can get more people involved.
Oh, that sounds like an exciting vision for where focus will take you in 2025, and a little bit of accountability between when Sharon hears you say these things. And now you'll have said them to me and a couple other people by the time this gets listened to. So that's the challenge I'll lay out to any of your friends that listen to this, Tim, is for them to do an accountability check with you when they see you and say, Tim, How's that focus coming along?
I can't wait till the first sale I'm at in March and somebody comes up and slaps me on the back and says, how's it going with focus, right? That's what I need because it'll bring me back.
Well, they say step number 1 is awareness, right?
So many step number 1s for me, Peggy. That's the problem.
I think I have a book on this that uses the word attention. Your attention, your property, but it's all about exactly what you're talking about. Are you a reader?
Yeah, I am. Not nearly enough. One of my big wishes is that I spend more time reading. So you'll have to give me a connection to get that book.
I will. Yeah. See, look, managing your attention, take full control of your attention and use your improved ability to focus on your own purposes.
Look at that. It's written for me and for 2025.
Complete control of your attention for the rest of your life.
You may need to FedEx that to me, overnight it.
Have you heard of Dan Sullivan?
Yes, I have.
Yes, I like his stuff. Well, okay, Tim. So we have talked about 2024, what challenged you, what changed you, and expanded on that into how your sector of the business has changed and what that's left you with as you celebrated your wins is even more excitement and fuel to put into the fire as you focus in for 2025, your one word. And with that, what else? What do we miss?
Oh, we hit a lot, but I do think the collaborations you and I have done, Peggy, have been educational to a lot of people and informative, and I hope we keep working on them in 2020. But I go back to something that I learned at World Dairy Expo, and I've told so many people this, that we talked a lot about mentorship there. And we interviewed 6, I think, very iconic people that are older. John Bosters won't like me saying he's older, but everybody else qualifies, right? Or at least my age. And every one of them said that they draw energy and use young people as mentors. And Peggy, I go back to your Uplevel podcast. That was one of the most profound things that I hadn't thought of about using young people as mentors. I get energy from young people, but I think we're afraid to say that we're learning from them. And every one of those guys, Peggy, you remember it. They all said that they've got mentors and heroes that are young. And that was pretty profound. And so I want to expand on that in 2025. That could be fun.
Well, thanks. I am pumped for 2025, Tim, and so grateful for you taking the time to jump back on with me as we celebrate some of the top episodes from 2024 right here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. You just heard from Tim Abbott here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. This is one of our top episodes from 2024. And if you want to hear the full episode, go back to number 1. And if you want to hear the full conversation from episode 143, head on back to Sitting on the Showbox with Tim Abbott. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and thanks for listening to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast.